Liberian voters had to head to the polls next month to choose a president and new representatives for both the House and the Senate.
But a Supreme Court ruling could eliminate many of the contesting candidates, including incumbent President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Thousands of supporters for President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf turned out for her recent re-election campaign launch in the capital, Monrovia. However, Johnson Sirleaf's candidacy and that of 5 other contestants remains in doubt, awaiting a Supreme Court decision on whether they meet the residency requirements to run for office. In August, citizens voted against a referendum to, among other things, delay the elections and also to reduce residency requirements for candidates from 10 years to 5. As a result, President Sirleaf, representing the Unity Party, may not qualify as she only returned to Liberia in 2003 after years in exile. The October 11th election will be the second democratically held vote since the country's civil war ended in 2003.
Now, we will have to work around it because of logistical reasons. Then, of course, we'll have to go to the nearest or the shortest possible time to have this runoff elections.
Whether or not Johnson Sirleaf and the other candidates can contest will be determined by the Supreme Court's clarification of the residency question expected any time before the election. A group of concerned citizens is challenging the National Election Commission's decision to include Johnson Sirleaf and the other candidates among the 16 candidates qualified to run, despite the referendum outcome which they say should have disqualified them. Analysts say turnout for the presidential poll is likely to be much higher than for the referendum, which they say may have been hindered by Liberia's lack of familiarity with referendums and the failure to adequately explain the process. In addition to the domestic rivalries, the conduct of the election may also determine the future role of the United Nations in the country. There are still 8,000 UN peacekeepers in Liberia at an estimated cost of $500 million per year. Johnson Sirleaf, who has been credited for some progress during her 6 years in office, including the negotiation of debt relief, is considered the favorite in the election. However, her popularity within Liberia does not match her international support, analysts say. Many say she's failed to crack down on corruption, and she has been criticized for breaking an earlier promise to stand for only one term. Liberia ranked 87th out of 178 countries on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index in 2010, compared with 137th when she was elected in 2005. Now, for more discussion on the upcoming Liberian elections, we are very pleased to have with us in the studio today Cletus Sieh, Liberia's Minister of Information. Minister Sieh, such a pleasure to have you in the studio and such an honor. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
So I guess everybody is wanting to know what is going to happen with the Supreme Court decision on clarifying the residency requirements. Are you surprised that they haven't reached that decision yet?
Well, no, I'm not surprised, but I'm very hopeful, though, that our president, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, along with other Liberians, will qualify. The reason I say that is that the law, the residency law, is kind of ambiguous. So clearly it did not say exactly when. Okay, it said 10 years, but 10 years prior to, 10 years immediately after. It doesn't clarify that. So most of the legal minds are saying that. This is not going to go anybody.
Mm-hmm. But now if it was even doubtful what the implications of it could be or what the term itself really means, why would it be such an issue? I mean, according to, I believe, Article 52 of that Constitution, it clearly says that the person has to have been resident in the country for 10 years before they vote. So
again, that's a legal issue, which we call for interpretation and which the Supreme Court will interpret. Because clearly, if you were to look at Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, you know that in 1997, during the elections, the one that brought Charles Taylor to power, Madam Sirleaf participated in that elections. She came second in 1997. She had been engaged. She had paid her taxes. She had businesses in Liberia. So how can one say she's not qualified? I mean, so clearly, though it will be interpreted, but as far as we are concerned, we think that she qualifies. Another thing I need to stress is that our own laws, apart from the constitutions, doesn't say anything much about domicile. So usually in these matters we revert to the American law. And clearly, if you look at the residency, as far as America is concerned, we understand it's now 6 months. You must be in America. I mean, at least every 6 months. It used to be 1 year. So judging by that, you can say clearly again that Madam Sieh qualifies.
But some might say then that invalidates the whole reason why the referendum was held, because that was one of the main key reasons for it, to reduce the years from 10 to 5.
No.
Or rather, but just to move on, because it's obviously a conversation that can go on for a long time. I want to talk about some of the criticisms that President Sieh has faced in her administration. People still accuse her of not tackling the issue of corruption. Obviously, she's defended it, saying that she even created the Anti-Corruption Commission, the issue of the economy, the issue of infrastructure and poverty. What would you say is the reason why critics are still so on her about that?
I think critics want a quick solution to the problem without realizing that the issue of corruption is very endemic. It has been a way of life for a very long time. You have had leaders who didn't do much in fighting corruption, who themselves participated in corruption. And so bringing it as an issue, as Madam Sieh had done during her inaugural speech in 2006, you know, people say, well, you are the one who say you will fight this monster called corruption, so we expect you to end it right away. And another thing is that the perception that when you talk about corruption, you are only pointing at the government without looking at other institutions. For example, the churches, the mosques, even the ordinary person in the market, you know. So how do we solve this, looking at how intrinsic it's been, have been an issue? But
Minister
what has the
Sieh,
government done?
I'm so sorry. We've run out of time. There's a lot to discuss, but we hope to have you back to discuss some more. Minister Sieh joining us here in the studio. He is the Minister of Information in Liberia.